Okay, we are going to start our last workshop of the day. Thank you. And with this one, we are going to go through the BTM system. It's important to know how to use it, but it's also important to know how it's assembled to begin with, and then like if something goes wrong, how to troubleshoot it. Okay, so I'm gonna start out by taking this laptop here and just kind of angling it down so you can kind of see down the table. All right. Now I'm gonna go through some basic tools here in just a moment, but I want to just kind of take you through. See if I can just angle that up a little bit. Okay, I just want to take you through the system here, and then we'll come back and kind of break everything down. So, in its essence, you've got like three pieces here, right? You've got your pumps, you've got your electrical, the motor right here, and you've got your pressure, right? Your air pressure is back here. And so, if we open this up, we did this earlier. Your two pumps are here, and if I could turn it this way, okay, you've really only got two types of lines. You've either got an airline or you've got a line that chemical is moving through, right? Everything that is the thin tubing in here, like this thin blue tubing, okay, that's air, right? This isn't set up this way, but if you wanted to be able to run one pump at a time, we could put valves on either side of this and even turn pumps on and off. Like say that you got to the point where you're like, man, sometimes we just like to use this just for one product at a time. Well, instead of having that other one run all the time on you and just suck air, you can just put a switch right there, turn it off, no big deal. Everything that you see in this thick tubing, and well, this right here is pulling all of your chemical, okay, and coming out of these two sockets over here. Okay, everything that we do is quick connect. We learned that in the long run because over the first year we had just pain in the butt, always having to unscrew everything. So everything's quick connected now. All right, these tubes down here that come through it, these are your siphon tubes, right? So red, we always think of red if we're just thinking about OxyPrep and OxyPar as being red is OxyPrep, right? Your first pump, and blue is OxyPar. That's why those labels are red and blue originally. Now, we use any product through it, but that's how it kind of originated. And then when you look at this side, you're always going to have a red and a blue over here as well, so you know exactly where to connect to, so that when we have a setup like this, like let's just imagine that this is your hose, right? And this is your red hose, then we know red goes to red, blue goes to blue, and we don't have any cross-contamination in between, that sort of thing. All right, so those are your pumps. The number one thing that actually goes wrong with the pumps isn't the pumps. It's these little hoses here. Like I just pushed that back in and it clicked up, right? Well, if you ever lose pressure to one of your lines, it probably has nothing to do with the equipment. You probably just need to go in here and just make sure that one just did it right there. Make sure all your connections are solid and pushed up into the machine. Every now and then you'll have a valve or something in here that you just need to replace, but it's always simple stuff. It's rarely a pump going bad. I think in the last, whatever it is, 3 or 4 years that we've been selling these, we've replaced less than 10 pumps in that entire time. And we've got hundreds of these units out there on the street. So they're durable pumps, but it's just the little things that you have to look for. And you always kind of start by making sure everything is tight, okay? But if you ever need any replacements and things, and after you guys kind of get into, I'm talking distribution now, after you guys kind of get into things and you've just got like parts on you and things like that, your customers will be able to just readily, buy those replacement parts from you. Okay. So then we come to this airline. So this airline up here, and I just pushed those two back in. This is what's driving your pressure to the pumps. So there's only two possibilities: off, right, where it's perpendicular to your line, and then on, right? anytime you're not working, you want that to be in the off position, because when you're first starting it up, you want to build pressure before anything and to prime your pumps. And the way that you want to do that is in the off position. You build pressure into these tanks over here. And then once those cut off, once all the pressure builds, then release that and it'll build pressure into the system. If that's in the open position, you could get, air into those pumps and it just cavitates and runs constantly. So you always want that in the off position. Up here, and I'm just going to kind of tilt this over, you've got two pressure gauges. The pressure gauge over here that's attached to the tank directly, that is just the tank pressure. The one to really think about is this second one that's kind of on top of the first one, and that regulates your pressure to your tip. So you always want to have that one as close to 50 PSI as possible. You can go 60, 70, things like that, but if you use 50 PSI as your standard, you're good to go. Here's your on-off switch. And then one other thing you want to look at is this release valve over here, right? Every time that you return from a job, you just want to unscrew that. A little bit of condensation will build up while you're using it. And so that will just let off any moisture that's in the system. You should just leave that open until you go to the next job, right? And then it'll remind you, if you don't, remember to close it up, because you'll just hear a shh, and then just tighten that back up, and now you're sealed up. Okay, but keep that open so it just keeps all the pressure drained out when not in use. Those are really the only things that you have to know about this in general, right? And most of the troubleshooting is those pumps and making sure those air lines are tight. Okay, so the next thing is a little bit of vocabulary, okay? Because every now and then we're all going to need to talk about, different pieces and parts and things like that. And it's important to know what everything is called, okay? So the two most common elements, okay, is a plug and a socket, okay? So here we've got plugs, but not all plugs are made the same and not all sockets are made the same, okay? So sockets are what you're plugging into. Plugs are literally a plug, okay? Anything that has a female thread to it is what is female, okay? People love to call that female and that male because it's a socket and that's a plug. But that's not the case, because you can have male plugs just like that, right? The threads on the outside, but you can also have female plugs, threads on the inside, okay? So that's what differentiates those. So as we're talking, just know that we're always going to refer to it as plugs and sockets, and then the question is it male or is it female, okay? So here we've got male sockets, right? But because we've got a hose barb here, right, which is our connector, we've got a female plug, and we're plugging our plug into our socket. Okay, pretty simple. But you have to get kind of used to that lingo. So then I mentioned something else, and that is hose barbs. So hose barbs are what give you your connection to your hose. Okay, so these simply fit inside the hose, just like this. And they're relatively tight at first, okay? Just like that. And man, I just kind of messed myself up there. So I'll pull that out eventually as I'm talking. And what keeps those in place are clamps, okay? So if we've got reinforced braided hose like this, and we've got our clamps and we've got our hose barbs, and then we've got all the sockets and everything else, we can make a hose assembly, okay? So that's what you really, like, the thing that you need to know most is, like, what happens if this develops a hole in it, right? And let's say that we're out in the field and all of a sudden a hole develops and we're like, man, we can, like, readily repair that and get back to work. Well, you got to have a couple tools for that. Here's a cutting tool That's for the clamps and a heat gun, okay? Basically, everything that you see here is the only thing that we really need on a day-to-day basis, and I'll move this up just a touch here, on a day-to-day basis if something goes wrong in the field. Because most of the time, like I mentioned, anything that's going on in your pumps and things like that, readily fixed by just pushing it back into place. So the next thing, did a hold? If it did, all that we have to do is take this, cut it off, okay? And then you want to just kind of think through the process. Like, you're going to want to make sure that you've got it marked so you know that like red goes to red and all that sort of thing. But before you do that, you're going to want to put your hose clamp on there, followed by your shrink sleeve, and then your barb. Okay, so it can just be pressed in place. And then you just want to pull that up. You just pull it up to the very top like that, okay? And then this won't work with a hairdryer. Tried it, doesn't work, got to have a heat gun.
Cigarette lighter?
Well, I haven't tried that one, but I know that this works. So all this is going to do is it's just going to shrink it to fit. Okay, done. So just so you can see that, if you're following along. And now we're secure there. We can pull that clamp back over the top. Don't pull it all the way to the top. You want to give some room here just in case you ever have to cut it back off, right? Because those clamps, they can be a bear if you have to tear them out. But if you leave a little bit of room right there, you can get pliers, or there's actually a cutting tool that you can get in there as well and snip that thing off. So just leave yourself a little bit of room there. Then all we have to do is take our clamping tool right there.
Are those for pets?
Yeah. And we're secure. Okay. So now it's just easy peasy, because at one end we're going to have a female socket, and then at the other end we'll have a female plug. Okay. And then that's just going to easily connect right back to your socket here, and you got a secure connection. Okay. So now that we've got a secure connection there, the next piece in line is going to be our PSG gun. Okay. And these are assembled like any other, like when we're talking about the hose, all of these things are individual pieces, but once the hose has, you know, your barbs and everything on it, and let's just assume at the other end of this we did one with, you know, a socket on it as well, then that would be called a hose assembly, right? So sometimes, like when you're outfitting contractor customer with something, we're going to sell to them sometimes in parts, but a lot of times it's going to be in assemblies. Like a brand new system like this, everything's going to be itemized as assemblies, whereas we as distributors are inventorying the individual items, okay? So the way that we do that, we can get into a little bit of that detail later, but we can actually take individual items and build them into assemblies in the inventory system, and then it makes keeping track of all parts and pieces doable while we know that we already have ready built assemblies, if that makes sense. Okay, so that's what that would look like. So then we get into the PSG gun side of things, and these are what are called reducers right here. This takes it from a 1/2 of an inch down to 1/4 of an inch. Now, you could do this in different ways. Like if you didn't want to have everything quick connected, you wouldn't have to. So in other words, this lance right here that gives you some extension and some reach, right? We do these in everything from 6 inches all the way through 79 inches. These lances could be threaded in just like that. And, you know, on the outside, you say, man, that's, you know, saving some cost. But the problem is that at the end of the day, all of this has to be disassembled and soaked. Otherwise, you're going to, you know, something's going to corrode here, right? So it's easiest to have all of these, your hose, your guns, your lances, and even down to your tips, like this, right? It's best to have these as individual quick connect assemblies, because now if we're going to soak everything, you can just have like bins that it goes directly into with some water. We know that it gets soaked, the guns are in there, everything's broken down very easily through quick connection, and you're not wasting time. Otherwise, you're unthreading stuff, and that really begins to add up over time. So these assemblies are just like everything else that we just went through, right? Where because we've got a male thread here, we would have on one side your female socket, and on the other side, you would have your female plug. And now that is actually a proper, once we get it torqued down, that would just be a proper lance assembly, okay? And likewise, the same socket that you see here as a male socket would be coming directly out of here, so that then we would just quick connect in and out, and now our assemblies are complete. Likewise, to complete this gun assembly, PSG gun assembly, coming into the back side of this from your hose would be a male plug, okay? So in this case, we've got female threading on each side, which means we need a male plug and a male socket to complete that gun assembly. We've got the completed assembly here. Now everything is just going together, right? And then the final piece of it is right here, where these give us the ability to quickly in the field switch between different tip sizes. So I think I made an illustration of this earlier where, man, if you had to wrench that out and potentially lose things, that's a pain. But these really kind of allow you to keep track of everything and quickly move from one tip size to another tip size, and you've got no downtime.
What if I need another tip size?
Well, then you could do one that's a quad, right? If you really like having it dialed in, you could have one of these that's a quad. We keep plenty of quads in stock, just like we keep the dual couplers in stock. So, but it does get expensive when you go, man, these tips are $30 or whatever they happen to be, and all of a sudden you have $100 tied up into one of these quad couplers. But I can tell you this, it's hard to lose them as compared to individual tips. So it's worth having at least a dual coupler. Okay, that's really all that there is to, like assembly, disassembly, things like that. Any questions about that?
How long do you soak that stuff in water for?
So a great way to do it is to actually use, and when we talk about like cleanup and things, we've got an acid solution and we've got an alkaline solution, and those two things neutralize. So let's just go there right away, because this cleans up much faster with a neutral solution, but it's either going to be slightly acidic or slightly alkaline within this line, depending upon what you were spraying through it. So let's just say that we already went through at the very end and we're finished the job, and we're ready to clean everything up. We've got a line of each full of chemical, which we're going to spray back into the original containers. Don't spray in the wrong containers, it'll just neutralize the other product, and then you really waste a lot of product. But spray it back into its original container so you can salvage what's there. You can run these pumps dry. It won't hurt them at all. So when you are running it, keep the power on, spray it all the way through to your spraying air, okay? And now you've got a line that has a little bit of oxyprep in it, a little bit of oxypar in it. Take a gallon of water and rinse that out, but capture that solution, right? Because it's slightly acidic on one side, slightly basic on the other. Do your next rinse as your neutralization rinse. So for your oxyprep line right here, your red line, right? Put that into your dilute solution of oxypar, and vice versa, right? Run that through, and then discharge that into your container where you're going to soak these. Okay, put these in there and allow them to soak, and it's going to neutralize these as well, and you're good. So you've neutralized your entire system here, which is going to maintain it. Now you've neutralized all your assemblies here, and you're finished just by using a couple gallons of what you kind of retained from cleaning it out in the first place. Now, I would, after you finish like that first neutralization rinse, I would go through with another gallon of just clear water through each line and get rid of that. It'll give you plenty of solution over here anyway to soak all of this stuff in. But you can really, with a couple gallons of water in total, like maybe 3 to 4 gallons of total water, have everything that you need to totally clean up this system, soak these. And, you know, if you soak these for 10, 15 minutes, that's all you would need. It's not like an overnight soak or anything. You just want to make sure that everything's been in a neutral solution. It's all cleaned out. That's it. That's all there is to it.
There's mine.
But it just ensures
so
that,
which one's acidic and which one's base?
Yep. So your acidic product is going to be the oxypar, right?
So you'd run that through the red line?
Mm-hmm. Yep, to neutralize it, yeah. You're talking about
on startup.
Oh, on startup. No, okay.
So you usually I think of my acids as reds.
Yeah, acid is red.
As blues.
That's right. That's right. So oxyprep is your red line.
Mm-hmm.
Oxypar is your blue line.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So you could go in there and make labels for each one of those, so they'd know which one to put the red line in.
That's why it's red and blue.
Oh, that works too.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. That's all there is.
So what's the grease gobbler? Is that more on the acidic?
That's alkaline. That's alkaline. So if we ever had to,
so like on the soot, where we're mixing a 50-50,
mm-hmm.
that would go through the red?
Yeah. Yep. So, you know, and that's compatible with your oxyprep, right? So those two go on the red side and you keep your oxypar on the blue.
So really you could go in there with labels on each side and say oxyprep.
You could. Yeah, you could like itemize it like right there with the chemicals that you want only used on that side of things and go by pH and go, you know, we're only going to run acidic, you know, or I'm sorry, alkaline products on red and acidic products on blue.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be actually a great idea. I'm glad we just captured that. Yeah.
Because there's, you know, one in every 4 men are colorblind. They can't see red or blue.
That would be James.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. I even have trouble sometimes, like when things get like they're not like bright red, mm-hmm. and it's not next to anything else. I'll be like, what is that? Yeah. Yeah, but that's all there is to, you know, kind of the whole use, assembly, and then maintenance of the system. And probably, you know, once every few years, we'll, you know, need to replace a pump or something like that. We're looking into pump kits right now where we could just do pump repair as well. Because, you know, a pump is expensive to replace, but a repair kit is like $50, $60, you know. So we'll probably end up having some of those as well.
Okay. We can't go down to Harbor Freight and get one?
Mm-hmm. No, tried. All right, that's it.
That's it.
Yep, that's it, Grace. Thanks for your time today. And when you order a BTM sprayer, we'll be sure to do a tutorial directly with you so that we can take your team through this as well, just in case they have specific questions. But we'll be glad to do that. So thanks a lot for joining us today. Bye.